Have you ever stopped to think about how something invisible can completely change your life? Something that grows slowly, silently, without obvious signs, until, suddenly, it becomes impossible to ignore. This is prostate cancer, a disease that affects 1 in 8 men throughout their lives. It may seem like just another statistic, but think about it for a moment. Among your friends, family, or coworkers, one of them could be this person. And the scariest thing? Many only find out when it is too late. This is the cruel face of prostate cancer. It advances without warning. There is no screaming pain. There is no clear symptom that says something is wrong. It's like a predator lurking, waiting for the right moment to attack. And when the signs finally appear, the battle often becomes more difficult. How to protect yourself? How to identify the enemy before he attacks? These are the questions that need to be asked, because your life could depend on them. Imagine an ordinary man, perhaps someone like you. He works, takes care of his family, follows his routine, and everything seems to be fine. Until one night he notices something different. A frequent urge to go to the bathroom interrupts sleep, something that had never happened before. He ignores it, thinking it's just something temporary, perhaps the result of drinking a lot of water before bed. But the months pass, and this frequency increases. He starts waking up 2-3 times a night. During the day, you feel an urgency that makes you run to the bathroom at inconvenient times. Still, he convinces himself that it's just part of getting older or a minor problem. After all, why worry about something so small, right? That man could be any of us. And that's exactly what makes prostate cancer so dangerous. It disguises itself as something harmless, something we can ignore. But behind these seemingly simple signs, something much bigger could be happening. The good news is that although prostate cancer is the second most lethal type among men, it is also one of the most treatable when detected early. 9 out of 10 men who act quickly manage to beat the disease. It is a message of hope, but it carries a weight. The responsibility to be attentive, to know the signs, and to seek help before it is too late. Now, you may be asking yourself, but why does this happen? Why is prostate cancer so insidious? Science doesn't have all the answers yet, but we know some things. Age, for example, is a crucial factor. From the age of 50, the risk increases significantly. And for Black men or those with a family history, the danger is even greater. These are the factors we cannot change. But there is something we can do: pay attention to our body and act quickly on the signs. And here's the key: understanding these signs could be the difference between life and death. But are we prepared to recognize them? Would you know how to identify the alerts that the body gives, even the silent ones? Think about it. How many times have you ignored something thinking it wasn't important? That back pain that seemed like just the result of a tiring day. That difficulty urinating that you attributed to stress or age. What if this was all a warning? This is the reality of prostate cancer. It doesn't come like thunder, he whispers. And that's exactly why it can be so devastating. But it doesn't have to be that way. Knowledge is our most powerful weapon against this disease. The more we know, the more prepared we are to act. And that's why you're here, reading this now. Because you understand that health is not something we can leave for later. And while you reflect on this, let me share something that may be even more impactful. Many men who discovered late-stage prostate cancer weren't necessarily ignoring the signs, they just didn't know they were signs. They didn't know that increased urinary frequency, the urgency to go to the bathroom, or that feeling of an incompletely emptied bladder were warning signs. They thought it was something trivial, something that could wait. And here is the conflict: how to differentiate what is common from what could be dangerous. How do you know if that persistent lower back pain is just a consequence of bad posture or something much more serious? How can you be sure that that intense fatigue you feel is not just the result of an exhausting routine, but a sign that something inside you is consuming your energy. It's questions like these that we need to face, because ignoring them is not an option. Not when we have the power to save lives, our own, a friend's, a parent's, or siblings. And that's exactly why we're here, to talk about the 8 silent signs that could indicate a problem. Each of them is a piece of the puzzle that we need to put together to protect our health. Before I continue, allow me to say something. If you've made it this far, you've already taken the first step. You chose information over ignorance. You chose to be aware. And that makes all the difference. Now, it's time to take the next step and explore the signs your body may be trying to show you. Because, at the end of the day, what is at stake is not just your health, but your life. But before we start, let me ask you a question. Have you ever thought about the impact that prevention can have on your life? In your family's life? That's where we are now. And believe me, what comes next could change the way you view your health. Because understanding the signs isn't just about detecting prostate cancer. It's about taking care of yourself as a whole. And now, let's move on. Because what you discover next could be the key to saving a life, maybe yours. Stay with me, and let's explore the first signs of this silent danger together. Imagine any morning. You wake up, drink your coffee, check your cell phone messages, and head to another day of work. Everything seems normal, routine, until something out of the ordinary starts to happen. You may notice that over the last few nights you have woken up more often than usual to go to the bathroom. It must be because of that water I drank late at night, you think, trying to minimize the discomfort. After all, who has never had nights like this? But what if this change in your routine is more than just a coincidence? What if it's the first sign of something more serious, something your body is trying to tell you? This is one of the first warning signs that prostate cancer may present: increased urinary frequency. Suddenly, that normal number of trips to the bathroom, between 6 and 8 times a day, turns into something much more frequent, especially at night. Waking up once or twice to urinate, something that should be rare, becomes almost constant. And while you try to convince yourself that it's just a detail, the signs keep appearing. Modern life has accustomed us to ignoring small discomforts, hasn't it? We are always too busy to stop and reflect on what the body is telling us. How many times have you spent a whole day dealing with discomfort, promising yourself that I'll deal with it later, but never taking action? This is even more common when it comes to symptoms that seem harmless, such as urinary urgency, that sudden and uncontrollable need to go to the bathroom. It appears in the middle of a meeting, during a trip, or even during leisure time, and causes discomfort. But you think, it's just another bad day. It will pass. What if it doesn't pass? There's a story that left a deep impression on me. A man named Jorge, aged 52, began to notice that he needed to go to the bathroom more often, especially at night. He thought it was something related to aging, a common thought, in fact. "It's getting old," he said, smiling. But what he didn't know was that it was a clear sign that something was wrong. Months passed, and the discomfort began to increase. Jorge felt that, even after urinating, his bladder never felt completely empty. "I didn't have time for that," he said later. "Life was too busy for me to worry." It wasn't until his wife convinced him to visit a doctor that Jorge discovered the truth. He had prostate cancer. Fortunately, it was still an early stage, and he was able to start treatment on time. But his story could have taken another turn, like so many other stories of men who ignore these signs for too long. And why does this happen? Why do so many of us avoid seeking medical help? Perhaps it is the fear of the diagnosis, the fear of appearing fragile, or simply a lack of knowledge about the symptoms. But what we need to understand is that ignoring these signs does not make them go away. On the contrary, it can give the problem enough time to grow into something much more difficult to deal with. Another symptom that often goes unnoticed is the sensation of incomplete evacuation in the intestine. It may seem strange to associate this with the prostate, but the body is an interconnected machine. When the prostate enlarges, it can put pressure on nearby structures, creating this feeling that something is not right. Many men attribute this discomfort to digestive problems, such as constipation or poor diet, without ever considering that there could be something more serious behind it. And, of course, there is the symptom that many avoid even talking about: urinary incontinence. Losing control of your urine, even in small episodes, can be extremely uncomfortable and even embarrassing. It's the kind of thing that is often hidden, kept secret, but that has a profound impact on quality of life and self-esteem. Imagine being on a date, in an important meeting, or even relaxing with friends, and suddenly facing this situation. It is a warning that should not be ignored, but that many try to justify as an age thing. Now I want you to imagine another scene. A man, aged 60, is sitting on the sofa after a tiring day. He feels a slight pain in his lower back, but doesn't think much of it. It must be my stance, he thinks. I spent too much time sitting today. He adjusts his position, tries to stretch, but the pain persists. The next day, it's there again. And the other one too. Slowly, the pain becomes part of his routine, something he simply learns to live with. What he doesn't know is that this pain could be a sign that prostate cancer has already advanced, affecting the spine or other nearby bones. That's the cruelty of prostate cancer. It doesn't scream. He whispers. And these whispers can easily be confused with everyday noise. But what if you could stop and listen? What if, instead of ignoring them, you paid attention to these little signs? How many lives could be saved? This is where we need to change our perspective. We need to stop treating the body like a machine that can keep working even with broken parts. We need to understand that each symptom is the body's way of communicating that something needs attention. Urinate more frequently? Don't ignore it. Feel like your bladder never empties completely? Don't ignore it. Persistent back pain? Don't ignore it. And that brings us to a fundamental question. Why do we wait until it's too late? Maybe because we don't want to appear weak, or maybe because we believe we don't have time. But the truth is that taking care of yourself is an act of courage, not weakness. And when it comes to prostate cancer, prevention can literally save lives. These small warnings, such as polyuria, nocturia, urinary urgency, and the feeling of incomplete evacuation, may seem like insignificant details. But for those who recognize them in time, they are the line between control and chaos. And if you have already felt any of these symptoms, or know someone who does, it's time to take action. Because the biggest mistake we can make is ignoring what the body is trying to tell us. And now that you know about these first signs, I want you to think, how many of them have been ignored? How many opportunities to act have already been missed? But don't worry, there's still time. In the next step of this journey, we will explore the signs that appear at later stages, signs that can change everything. And here's the invitation: don't stop now. Because the knowledge you are gaining could be what saves a life. The human body has a peculiar way of letting us know when something is not right. Sometimes the signs are so subtle that they seem to get lost in the whirlwind of routine. Other times, they arrive as a dull pain that doesn't go away, insisting on being noticed. But what happens when we ignore these warnings? What happens when the body tries to scream, but we prefer to muffle the sound? This is the reality of advanced stage prostate cancer. It starts as a whisper, small signs we explored earlier, like urinary frequency or the feeling of incomplete bowel movements. But as it progresses, its impact becomes impossible to ignore. From here on, the changes are no longer subtle. They become disruptive, altering life in a way that demands immediate action. Imagine a man, let's call him Ricardo. He is the type of person who always put his family first. Her days were filled with work, commitments, and precious moments with her children. But in recent weeks, something was different. He began to feel persistent pain in his lower back. It must be tiredness, he thought, like so many other men. After all, who doesn't feel pain from time to time? The problem was that the pain didn't get better. It was there when he woke up, continued throughout the day, and became unbearable at night. He started avoiding certain sleeping positions, trying to ease the discomfort, but nothing seemed to work. What he didn't know was that that pain wasn't a simple consequence of aging or poor posture. It was a classic symptom of prostate cancer that had already advanced, spreading to the spine. This back pain is one of the most serious warnings the body can give. Prostate cancer has a striking characteristic. It often metastasizes to the bones, especially the spine. This spread causes deep pain, different from any muscle pain or natural wear and tear. It is a pain that persists, which does not go away with rest or common painkillers. And yet, many men, like Ricardo, ignore it, believing it is something minor, something that can wait. But what if you can't? How many times do we put off taking care of ourselves, thinking that it's nothing? How many opportunities for early diagnosis are missed because of this habit of minimizing how we feel? Another sign that deserves special attention is the presence of blood in the urine, hematuria, or in the semen, hemispermia. These symptoms are often underestimated or attributed to other benign conditions, such as urinary tract infections or kidney stones. But when they appear, they should be treated as a red alert. Urine with reddish, pinkish, or even brown tones can be an indication that something much more serious is happening. It's as if the body is begging to be noticed, asking you not to ignore it. And here's the most important point. Even these symptoms, which seem so obvious, are often not enough to make men seek help. But maybe it's fear. Maybe it's the stigma. Or maybe it's the mistaken idea that this will pass. But it doesn't happen. And the longer you wait, the harder the fight becomes. Let's talk now about two other signs that are often ignored: unexplained weight loss and intense fatigue. These are symptoms that are often associated with other conditions, such as stress, metabolic problems, or even depression. But when they appear in conjunction with other prostate-related symptoms, they cannot be ignored. Imagine a man who, without any changes to his diet or exercise routine, begins to lose weight quickly. He notices that his clothes are loose, that his energy is decreasing, but he can't identify why. This weight loss, combined with a feeling of profound exhaustion, is a sign that the body is fighting something big. In the case of prostate cancer, this occurs because cancer cells consume the body's nutrients, leaving it weakened. And once again, many ignore it. But because we are programmed to believe that being strong means enduring. But isn't true strength in recognizing that something is wrong and seeking help? Now, I want you to imagine another situation. A man is in an intimate moment with his partner. Everything seems normal until he feels pain during ejaculation. It's a dull pain, like pressure or discomfort that he's never felt before. He tries to ignore it, thinking it was just a momentary thing. But the pain persists and begins to affect not only your physical health, but also your confidence and your relationships. This is another symptom that, although less talked about, can be an early indicator of prostate problems, including cancer. Painful ejaculation, often accompanied by other urinary symptoms, is a sign that something is not working as it should. But how many men are willing to talk about it? How many have the courage to seek help, even when the discomfort begins to significantly impact their life? And here is the central question. Why do we wait for the body to reach its limit before taking action? Do we need intense pain, visible blood, drastic weight loss to finally take care of ourselves? What if, instead of reacting too late, we started listening for the small signs early on? What makes prostate cancer so insidious is its ability to hide, to camouflage itself as something less alarming. It's not like a fire alarm that sounds loud and clear. He is more like a slow flame, which silently grows until it becomes uncontrollable. But like any fire, it can be contained if identified in time. Now let me pause and ask, do you know anyone who has ignored signs like these? Maybe a friend, a sibling, or even yourself. And what would happen if that person had sought help earlier? These are reflections that we need to make, because the cost of not acting is simply too high. As we wrap up this part, I want you to take this with you. The body always talks. He always finds a way to communicate that something is wrong. The question is, are we willing to listen? Are we willing to prioritize our health, even when this requires facing fears, discomforts, and stigmas? Our next step will be to explore the systemic impact of prostate cancer, how it affects not just the body, but also the mind and life as a whole. Because at the end of the day, the fight against this disease is not just physical. It is emotional, psychological, and deeply transformative. So stay with me, because what you discover next could change the way you view your health and that of your loved ones. Knowledge is your best weapon, and together we can make a difference. The human body is a complex machine, connected by invisible networks of signals, reactions, and consequences. When something goes wrong, this machine starts giving warning signals, not just in one place, but throughout the system. When prostate cancer progresses, it not only affects the gland itself, he becomes a presence that can consume body and mind in surprising, silent, and often devastating ways. And this is where we need to pay attention, because the impacts of this disease go far beyond what we imagine. Imagine, for example, Paolo. At 58, he has always been active, the type who never went a day without a walk or a football match with friends. He prided himself on maintaining a healthy lifestyle, on never being sick from more than a cold. But in recent months, something had changed. First, he began to lose weight inexplicably. His clothes no longer fit the same, and his friends noticed that he was thinner, a compliment he initially accepted with a smile, unaware that there was something more sinister behind it. What Paul didn't know was that his body was fighting an invisible threat. Prostate cancer had spread silently, consuming energy, nutrients, and even the vitality he always had. This unexplained weight loss is one of the most alarming signs of advanced stage cancer. It's not about losing weight because you changed your diet or increased your exercise. It's a weight loss that happens without warning, as if the body itself was being drained from the inside out. And along with the weight loss came something even harder to ignore: profound exhaustion. Paolo began to notice that simple tasks, like climbing the stairs or walking to the bakery, became a challenge. He was always tired, as if every movement required monumental effort. This intense fatigue is another systemic sign that prostate cancer can cause. When cancer cells spread, they don't just invade organs. They also steal energy, leaving the body with no reserves to fight back. Now, imagine what it's like to live with that feeling. Fatigue does not disappear with a night's sleep or a day of rest. It is always there, like a constant weight, affecting not only the physical but also the mind. Paolo began to feel frustrated, irritated, as if his body was betraying him. He didn't understand what was happening, and this sent him into a cycle of doubts and fears that consumed him as much as the disease itself. And the most surprising thing? Paul is not alone. Studies show that more than 60% of men diagnosed with advanced prostate cancer report debilitating fatigue as one of their main symptoms. It's an alarming statistic, but it's also a reminder that we need to be aware of not just the direct physical signs, but also the secondary impacts that cancer can have on the body as a whole. Furthermore, there is another aspect of prostate cancer that is often not discussed: the emotional and psychological impact it causes. When symptoms begin to significantly affect daily life, mental health also suffers. Imagine being confronted with a disease that not only consumes your body, but also challenges your identity, your masculinity, your confidence. It's an invisible weight that many men carry in silence. An example of this is pain in the pelvic or lower back region, which can be persistent and disabling. This pain, in addition to being physical, often becomes a constant reminder that something is wrong. It interferes with sleep, daily activities, and intimate moments. For many men, this pain is more than a symptom. It is an inescapable presence that affects the way they see themselves. But why is this so important? Because pain, fatigue, and weight loss are not just isolated problems. They represent a systemic impact, a chain reaction that can affect every aspect of a person's life. And when ignored, these signs can lead to even more serious consequences. One of the most worrying aspects of advanced stage prostate cancer is its ability to metastasize, especially to the bones. When this happens, the pain becomes even more severe, often described as a deep, throbbing pain that does not respond to conventional treatments. It is a pain that can steal your quality of life, transforming simple activities into unbearable challenges. And here's something many don't know. Prostate cancer is responsible for one of the highest rates of bone metastasis among cancer types. When it reaches the bones, it weakens the structure, making patients more susceptible to fractures and serious complications. This is why persistent pain in the spine, ribs, or other parts of the body should not be ignored, especially in men over 50. But despite all these challenges, there is hope. Early detection remains our best weapon against prostate cancer. When identified in the early stages, the chances of a cure are surprisingly high. More than 90% of men diagnosed early survive the disease. It's a statistic that highlights the power of knowledge and action. So why do so many men wait? Why do we ignore the signs until it's too late? Maybe it's the fear of the unknown, the stigma surrounding men's health, or simply a lack of information. But what we need to understand is that taking care of yourself is not a sign of weakness. It is an act of courage. And this leads us to an important question. How can we change this mindset? How can we ensure more men recognize the signs and seek help before the disease progresses? The answer starts with awareness. We need to talk about prostate cancer openly, without taboos, without prejudice. We need to remind each other that listening to our bodies is essential, that every symptom, no matter how small it may seem, deserves attention. Now, I want you to reflect on something. When was the last time you really listened to your body? When was the last time you prioritized your health, instead of ignoring it because you thought it can wait? Because at the end of the day, waiting is a luxury that many cannot afford. As we wrap up this part, remember, the systemic impact of prostate cancer is not just on the body. It's about how it affects the mind, emotions, life as a whole. But with the right knowledge, we can turn fear into action, doubts into answers, and uncertainty into hope. In the next step, we will talk about how to prevent, act, and protect yourself. Because while prostate cancer is a challenge, it doesn't have to be a sentence. Stay with me, because what comes next could be the beginning of a transformation. Prostate cancer is more than a physical illness. It is a journey, a mix of fears, uncertainties, and, often, courage. It's a story that unfolds silently, but has the potential to transform not only the lives of those diagnosed, but those around them. And now that we've walked through the signs, impacts, and challenges of this disease together, it's time to look at what really matters. What you can do, what we can do, to face this threat head-on and create a different future. Imagine for a moment what it would be like if all the men around us were armed with knowledge. If everyone knew how to recognize the signs, seek help early, and face the diagnosis with determination and clarity. How many lives could be saved? How many families could avoid the pain of a loss that often could have been prevented? What makes prostate cancer so unique is that it gives us a choice. Unlike many other illnesses, we have a chance to act before it takes over. 9 out of 10 men diagnosed early survive the disease. This is more than a statistic. It's a message of hope, a reminder that every exam, every conversation with a doctor, every decision to take care of yourself can make a huge difference. But how do we start? The answer is simple but powerful: with prevention. Prevention starts with something basic, but which many men avoid: the annual checkup. If you are over 50 years old, or 45, if you have a family history of prostate cancer or are Black, a higher risk group, having regular PSA tests and digital rectal examinations is not just important, it is essential. Yes, talking about these exams still carries stigma and prejudice, but think about it. What is more uncomfortable, an exam that takes just a few minutes or the impact of a late diagnosis? Remember what we learned throughout this script. Initial symptoms, such as urinary frequency or the feeling of a full bladder, may seem like minor inconveniences, but they are valuable warnings that something may be wrong. If you recognize them and act quickly, the chances of controlling the disease are immense. Each symptom is like a traffic sign, asking you to stop, observe, and take the right direction. And if prevention is the first step, information is the second. How many men around you know how to recognize these signs? How many friends, siblings, parents, or colleagues need to hear what you learned here? Sharing knowledge is an act of care. It's a way to ensure that this message reaches those who need to hear it. I want you to reflect for a moment. Have you ever felt afraid to seek help? Have you ever thought that ignoring a symptom would be easier than facing it? Don't blame yourself. We've all been there. Fear of the unknown is human, but what defines our strength is how we deal with it. And today, you have a choice. Allow fear to hold you back or use it as motivation to take care of yourself and those you love. There is a story that always moves me, that of Antonio, a 62-year-old man who decided to see a doctor because his best friend insisted. He had no obvious symptoms, but thought it would be good to get it checked out. The diagnosis came as a shock: prostate cancer. But because it was caught early, treatment was quick and effective. Antonio today is an example of how prevention saves lives. He often says, "My friend saved me, and now I try to save others." And now I ask, who can you save with what you learned today? It can be yourself. It could be someone you love. It could be someone who doesn't even know they are at risk. The impact of a conversation, a reminder, an encouragement to take a test can be much greater than you imagine. Before we close, I want to talk about something even deeper: the emotional impact of this journey. If you have ever faced prostate cancer, whether personally or through someone close to you, you know how challenging it can be. Anxiety, fear of the future, doubts about what comes next. It's all part of the process. But I want you to know that you are not alone. Millions of men have faced this and come out stronger. There is support, there are communities, there are resources available to help navigate these challenges. And if you've never experienced this, but now understand the importance of being aware, I want you to take this message with you. Taking care of your health is not a luxury, it's a priority. Prostate cancer is insidious, but it is not invincible. With prevention, information, and action, we can beat it. Now, I want to ask something of you. If this content was useful, if it impacted you in any way, subscribe to the channel, like this video, and leave a comment. Share your opinion, your doubts, or even your experiences anonymously, if you prefer. I want this space to be a place for dialogue, where we can learn from each other and grow together. What's more, share this video with someone you think needs to hear this message. Be it a friend, a relative, or a coworker. You never know the impact a simple action can have on someone's life. Finally, I want to thank you. Thank you for being here, for taking the time to learn, to reflect, to take care of yourself and those around you. This is a journey for all of us, and each step we take together brings us closer to a healthier and more conscious future. Remember, knowledge is power, but action is transformation. Let's take care of men's health together, because it matters. See you in the next video, and thank you for being part of this journey.